Our presenter tonight as a vendor is Jimmy Booth. Jimmy is obviously well known to almost everybody, but every time I talk with him, I learn something new about him and Bill. Turns out he and Bill got together some 39 years ago. And Jimmy was visiting with him, working on one of the early runs of the Shays. And it was supposed to be a short-term get-together, turned into a career, and we are the beneficiaries of all that. I asked Jimmy, just for grins, how many locomotives has he weathered by now? And he tells me some 2,400 or more. That's a lot of paint, even in our scales. The other thing that I'm interested to pass on to you, if you haven't seen or experienced his locomotive 223, he built a live steam locomotive, which he runs at Train Mountain and other venues down in California throughout the season. So Jimmy is going to present tonight on where PVL is with the new Mallets. Tell us about what you've been up to with the new Mallets.
Well, good evening, everybody. Glad to be here this evening. We have a little bit of update on the Mallets. We've obviously had the pilot models available for viewing at the Denver National Narrow Gauge Convention. And you can see the three of them pictured here. We've spent several months going over the locomotives with corrections. There's about 80 some corrections done to the locomotives from what you see from these photographs. Most of those corrections have been implemented already by the builder, and they're well underway. Basically, by February, the entire superstructure, which is the cab and tender assemblies, the tanks, will be completed. The tenders are completed for the Sumter Valley locomotives, and they're beginning work on the mechanism. So they're coming right along. Our friend Seho, a lot of you have met him in the past. His daughter ended up having cancer the past couple of years, and the last 6 months has been very hard on Seho and his family because of the surgeries that his daughter had to have. She had to move from the United States back to Korea to have her caretaker take care of her. And so a little bit of a slowdown, but not too bad. Seho's working as fast as he can to get these things to the paint shops. But if you can get the next slide for me, Russ. Here's a picture of 50 close-up view of the pilot model. This kind of gives you, it's kind of nice to see a pilot model in the brass state before it gets painted, because you can really appreciate all the detail and the workmanship that goes into the patterns. There's around 1,400 and some parts on these locomotives. And you can see even like the side rods and that type of thing before they're went to the platers. You can see them in the natural brass finish and all the individual nuts and bolts and details on the parts. We can see the side view of number 50, kind of gives you a good idea of the way the model looks. We're modeling locomotives and versions that have never been built before in any scale. So if you're one of the privileged few that were able to order one of these, you're going to have a unique locomotive in your possession. We were able to find the original drawings from Baldwin to be able to use as the baseline for the UINTAH models, and I think they're really shaping up nice. It's going to be fun to have an articulated running on a narrow gauge railroad. So I've had the privilege of being able to have them on my layout, but I can't wait to actually see a painted one. This is the Clover Valley. It still exists in Niles Canyon. This locomotive design was slated to have some of them built as narrow gauge locomotives. The orders were never placed, but we went ahead and continued the history of what Baldwin was going to do, and so we were manufacturing the split tank version of this Mallet as a narrow gauge as it would have been built. So, and it happened to be amongst the reservations the most popular version, probably 2-to-1. A lot of the freelance guys wanted them for their layout. So very unique piece. The Clover Valley has a a lot of different modifications that you can make to it when you ordered it, with as far as the oil bunker, the coal fence in the back, and that type of thing. So everybody's going to have a unique piece, kind of like a one-of-one model when they receive them. This next slide is a 3D print of the front cylinder set for the Clover Valley, and you can see the valve guides in the background. When we made modifications to the locomotive, we made 3D drawings and 3D prints to make sure that our corrections would fit on the existing pilot models, so that to limit the amount of changes, because you can appreciate when you have a locomotive with over 1,400 pieces, if you change one piece, it's kind of a domino effect. You have to change everything. So we wanted to make sure that we were thorough with our process as far as making the corrections, getting things right. And as you can see by the cylinder set, there's a lot of detail on these models. So going to be neat to see them. We will be getting soon, probably early spring, late spring, another set of pilot models all painted up with the corrections made to them. So we'll look forward to that too. We've got manufactured a speaker enclosure that fits in the tender. I don't know how many people remember the Knowles square speaker that PFM used to sell. It was a very high-end speaker and it sounded really well. And so we kind of duplicated that technology so that we could drop that speaker enclosure in the oil tank and have the sound protrude out of the bottom of the locomotive to give the best bass sound possible for the decoder sound. So we look forward to being able to see how these locomotives sound. A lot of people have asked about the size of the locomotive, because once again, they are articulated and they are big locomotive. They were designed that way to obviously haul a lot of tonnage. This is a photo on my layout, and that tunnel porthole is a AIM Enterprises HO tunnel porthole. And so you can see about the clearance issues that she does go through that porthole opening just fine. So it kind of gives you a perspective on how big the locomotive is. And I got a few other photos if Russ wants to. This is a photo of the pair of engines on a 26.5-inch radius curve. So it kind of gives you an idea how much the front end protrudes beyond the cylinders when it's in a curve. And so if you do have, for clearance wise, if you do have tight canyons or whatnot, make sure that you've got plenty of clearance. But this gives you kind of an idea of what it will look like on a 26.5-inch radius curve. And they look pretty good on that. Obviously 26-inch radius curve is pretty tight for anything in SN3 unless it's small logging. But these engines were able to negotiate a lot tighter curves in real life. But because of the limitations of having to have things scale spaced and work on a model train, some of that stuff goes away as far as the gearbox and drive shaft angles and all that. So we can't really hunker them down like they would have gone around the scale curvatures in Utah, but we got really close with it. So there's what it's going to look like on a tight radius. Here's the Clover Valley, which is sitting next to a mill complex. Kind of gives you an idea about the size of her. It looks really good no matter where you place it on the layout, that's for sure. So we look forward to seeing them. This locomotive is going across a bridge here, and it's on a 27-inch radius curve. So you can see they look really good even on tight radiuses, and gives you a perspective of kind of how big the locomotive is versus the rest of the trestle and that type of thing. Here it is against a mine complex. The mine complex is pretty big, so it looks daunting with the small locomotive. But once again, it kind of gives you a perspective of the size of the locomotive. And then we made some custom figures for the locomotive, and the figures will be for sale as individuals. I was a train master on the SP18 in Laws this past spring for a Peter Laro photo special. And so I got to run and fire the SP18 quite a bit in 2-week period of time. And so we went ahead and had figures made of myself but we also had figures made of a couple other crew members, and then we also had a figure made of Bill Peter his own self. So you can have him on your layout taking a nap any place you'd like. And so we look forward to being able to release those in the coming months.
One of the things that I'm working on with you guys is the paint scheme. And your bill is solicited from everybody who's ordering these, their understanding of where they want specific applications made of striping and so on. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, obviously we're modeling narrow gauge locomotives early on in life, and most of the locomotives that came from Baldwin had blocking lines around the lettering. They had white trim around the cylinder blocks. And so after that, you guys can go kind of free what you want. We have like several different font styles that you can choose from to put your railroad name on the tanks. And some guys have elected to put their logos on the locomotive. And so you kind of have to use your imagination on how you want your railroad to look or your locomotive to look versus the type of railroad you're modeling. And so it gives you an opportunity to have a little bit of variety beyond the normal motive power that you have. Obviously you can get a hold of Bill and talk to him about it, but you can have your engine all snazzed up with trim lettering and blocking around all the numbers and lettering in the cylinders, or you can have it just bare bones with just a number on the tank or a herald. It's all up to you, and we're willing to do whatever you want to the locomotive, to make it exactly what you want. Like I said, these things are kind of one of one. You're going to have the only one in the world. So, be creative with it and get what you want.
One of the things that I appreciated you mentioning today was how much time it takes to do some of this detailed work. For instance, you mentioned that the 3D printing of the cylinders there took 30 hours to generate in the application on your computer. Can you give everybody a sense of what's involved in terms of the time you're putting into this project?
Well, you got Bill and I both working on it solid for several months. We probably don't want to include our time, but we have a lot of 12 to 18-hour days on drawing parts. I deal with the factory almost every night for 4 to 5 hours, 7 days a week. We work on drawings during the day, and then we have design reviews with the engineers at the factories in the evening. We do things like manufacture 3D parts to see if, what the object's going to look like. And so that requires, drawing the components. Some of the components are very difficult to draw. They take days, if not weeks, to draw sometimes. And then the 3D prints, they're not just your normal run-of-the-mill 3D prints. They're a high-resolution resin print that, the print slices are under 1/1000th of an inch. And they don't take 4 or 5 hours like your normal printer does. They take, entire day sometimes, or day and an evening. So depending on what the part is, it can be quite a tedious task.
All right, thank you. Let's open it to a couple of questions if anybody's got one. A very brief question, not so much a comment.
There are a couple of comments in the chat, Russ. Just from Larry McDonald says, fantastic looking locomotives. John Scher says, is it too late to order the Sumter Valley? What is the cost?
Yes, the locomotives are over reserved right now. So the chances of getting one is probably pretty slim, if, almost impossible unless somebody backs out.
Okay. And Jim Spice says, looking forward to seeing mine. And it'll be ready for the SM3 symposium, won't it? In Mesa in April.
Not quite, but we might have the pilot models, the new pilot models. So cool. You better have clean track.
All right. Anything else in the chat there, Robin?
Nothing else in the chat, Russ.
All right. Thank you. I want to express to Jim my thanks for his being with us tonight. Many of you know that this flu is out there with a real vengeance. And my understanding from Jim is that just about the whole shop and that whole area of California is down with this bug. And so it's not always as straightforward as you'd expect. I envy you sitting in the cab of that number 18. That's an official viewing, official looking shot. So,
It's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. All right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me, and have a good evening, guys.
All right, we'll look forward to an update here in a couple of months as you're ready to keep us updated.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.